Hello ladies and gentlemen, Gaming Medley here, and today we're going to be discussing the newest trailer that came out regarding Halo 5 Guardians, a live action trailer which pronounces that Petty Officer Spartan 117, aka John, aka Master Chief, is deceased no more. Nada, he's gone. And of course this sent people to various social media sites in droves, saying in this exact voice, "Excuse me, sir. Master Chief is in fact the most important character that has ever existed in the video gaming universe, and I am extremely distressed to hear that we will not be able to play him in the upcoming Halo game. I would like for you to reconsider your decision and please reinstate Master Chief in this game. Thank you." Which they don't need to do, because of course Master Chief isn't dead, you rummies. You twats. You're not twats. But you obviously haven't read all the novels set in the Halo universe, and neither have I, but I have read several of them, and if you read the novels, you quickly come to terms with the fact that the UNSC, aka the United Nations Space Command, has a certain rule regarding Spartans who go missing or have been proclaimed deceased, and that rule, the protocol that they follow whenever a Spartan is killed or captured or disappears, is to do exactly the opposite of what the UNSC spokeswoman in this new trailer does. She says that Spartan 117, aka Master Chief, has been killed. The actual protocol that UNSC is supposed to follow whenever a Spartan disappears or is killed is to say that that Spartan is MIA. This is a tactic to keep the regulars' morale up and convey the illusion that Spartans can never be killed, that they are this kind of godlike super soldier, and that if humanity has them on their side, humanity will be safe for all time. Now, in some instances, this is actually true, and Spartans that have been reported MIA have reappeared out of nowhere saying, "Sup, bitches, I am back." So, the UNSC is clearly not following protocol in this trailer, which leads me to believe that this is some sort of propaganda set up against Master Chief, which would make sense because we know that the main plot revolves around you playing as Spartan Locke a good bit of the time, and you are retracing Master Chief's footsteps because he has left the UNSC along with his fire team Blue Team, and you as Locke, along with your fire team Osiris, attempt to retrace his steps and figure out where he has gone and what his mission is. Now, Master Chief's exact mission is of course unconfirmed in way of its actual prerogative or primary objective, but it is safe to assume that it probably has something to do with him and his team discovering another Forerunner threat like Didact. We have seen Promethean constructions in the trailers, which, in case you don't remember, which you probably do and that's dumb of me to say, Promethean constructions are the warriors that the great Forerunner warrior Didact used in Halo 4 that we had to kill by the droves before we eventually took him out. So my theory is that another Forerunner has probably appeared since we see more Prometheans in the trailer, and it's probably at least fairly possible that Didact wasn't the ultimately last Forerunner. It's kind of set up that he is, but then it was also set up that Master Chief would probably be gone in Halo 5, and look, he's back. So I'm just saying, it's not outside of the realms of possibility that another Forerunner threat has appeared. Another strong possibility is that the Flood may be making a recurrence, because we all know 343 Studios likes to bring back things that we thought were dead and say, here, it's back. Don't question it, it's fine, just do it. So of course, to everyone who's saying that Master Chief is going to be deceased in the beginning of the game or somewhere close to it, that is completely not the case. I do think it would be an interesting turn for the game to take. Let me make that completely clear, and I would actually be pretty down for that. It would be interesting to me if we played a few missions as Master Chief and thought that, oh, we're going to be playing Master Chief for a long period of the game, but then he dies mysteriously, and we then play Locke, who has to figure out how he died, what his mission was when he died, and then have to complete that mission for him or something. I would be down with that, because Master Chief has been around for a long time and it's probably time for him to mosey on out of the Halo franchise and let some new people come in, and I'm always down to see mostly Nathan Fillion, who's not Locke, but I'm just gonna pretend, because I love that man. Regardless, I would be down for that, but it's probably not going to happen. What's more likely is that it's probably going to be a situation where Locke eventually catches up with Chief through whatever series of events, finds out what Chief's mission is, comes to sympathize with the Chief, and then fake Chief's death so that the UNSC thinks he's dead after they branded Chief an enemy of the state, which we do know is kind of what's going on. We do know, or at least most people know, that the trailer that premiered that said Chief was deceased is probably a propaganda trailer from the UNSC in the Halo game world that's meant to spread fear among the populace and mask the UNSC's actual manhunt of Master Chief. So what I think is probable is that Locke eventually catches up to Chief, comes to sympathize with Chief, because of course you come to sympathize with Chief. He's fucking Master Chief, bitch. And then eventually helps Chief stage his own death in order to let Chief and Blue Team go do whatever they were going to do, or maybe even just retire. We know that there's this entire theme throughout the games that being a Spartan makes you a soldier, but it also makes you something more. We see that in the end of Halo 4, where I'm going to paraphrase, but the officer who's talking to Master Chief at the end of the game, whose name is Lasky, Chief says that it's the duty of soldiers to protect humanity, and Lasky then tells Chief that he's talking about soldiers as if they are different from humans, and then goes on to explain that soldiers are just humans who have taken the burden upon themselves to protect humanity. They're not two separate things. It's something that is played with throughout Halo, and it's actually probably the most philosophical part of the entire Halo game series, is this entire idea that Spartans, throughout all their augmentations and possible brainwashing and all of the ways their genes are altered, are taught that they are something more than human, that they're separate from humans, that humans are something less that have to be protected and Spartans are something more whose only duty is to protect. It creates an interesting contrast, because on the one hand you have these Spartans who are essentially just these paragons of virtue who never fail to carry out their duty. They will go as far as they need to go, even if it means sacrificing themselves to carry out their duties. But it's also left open to interpretation, because a huge part of that is what happens when a Spartan decides that they are human. We know that Spartans are immensely and significantly different than the average human in terms of body size, thought processes, what they can do. They're essentially just stronger, better, faster humans in every aspect. What happens when a Spartan decides that either they don't like the fact that they're kind of relied upon to protect humanity and they have to be this elite force? What happens when a Spartan rebels? Or what happens when a Spartan simply decides that they want a human life? Is that what's going on with Master Chief in this story? Have he and Blue Team? Because you've got to remember, Master Chief and Blue Team are intrinsically connected on a very deep level. They trained as children. All of these guys know each other very, very well. Have Master Chief and Blue Team decided that they want a life for themselves that's not just endless war and death? We know that the death of Cortana shook John, aka Master Chief, very, very badly in Halo 4. We know that it was right after Cortana's death that he mentioned soldiers and humanity being something different, as if to convince himself that he shouldn't have to feel emotions, that he shouldn't be so emotional about Cortana's death. But of course he is. He lost his greatest ally. It's an idea that's constantly played with throughout the Halo series. This idea that yes, you have these soldiers who are more than human, but are they really more than human? All of this goes to say, relaying back to the main point of the video, that this has strong collusions with the propaganda trailer that was just released, because if this is the case, and if Master Chief's reason for disappearing with Blue Team is simply the fact that he wants to be more human, it plays upon the intrinsic need for humanity to control that the UNSC would then proclaim him as an enemy of the state. It plays upon the idea that humans often see other humans or other beings as property if they do enough to them or invest enough in them. And that's a very interesting thing. What's more interesting is that they're going to need to play off of that with Locke, and in order to make Locke a sufficiently interesting character plot-wise, they are going to need to have him realize what Master Chief has been through. Locke is a young Spartan who's starting out his career as a Spartan, as one of these elite warriors that everybody looks to as gods, is going to need to look at Chief and see that that's what he could turn into in a decade or in a few decades. That's something that's really interesting, because then you're left with the question, is this trailer propaganda by the UNSC, which is strongly possible? Or is it actually the finishing cutscene of the game? Does Locke rely more on his hubris than his humanity and end up actually killing Master Chief in order to fulfill his primary directive as a Spartan? Or does he see Chief's humanity and sympathize with Chief and fake Chief's death so that Chief can go live a normal life? Of course, this is all relying on the assumption that the plot does involve Chief wanting to do something else than to constantly fight and be a Spartan. If the plotline is that Chief is in fact hunting down another Forerunner maybe, or combating a different strain of the Flood, then the entire plot changes. But if Chief's doing that and the UNSC finds out through Locke that he is doing that, why would they hunt him down and make him an enemy of the state? Is it because the UNSC has had something to do with this Forerunner recurrence or with this Flood recurrence? Have they maybe been researching the Flood and accidentally released a new strain? Did Chief find out? Were they experimenting with Forerunner structures and accidentally activate another Forerunner? Did Chief find out about that? Have they been trying to control a Forerunner, and did Chief find out about that and want to go either try and reason with the Forerunner or unleash the Forerunner? Ultimately, Chief's primary directive is something we don't know right now, and it might be assuming too much of the Halo series as an action thriller shooter mostly, to assume that they would go for a storyline as impactful and as deep ultimately as letting the story be about Chief's reclamation of his humanity along with his fire team. But I personally hope that's the way they do it, because that would be by far the most interesting storyline to me for them to pursue. All of this is to say that, of course, this trailer is not the initial scene of the game. Of course, Master Chief doesn't start out dead. If you want evidence of this, you can just look to 343 Studios' Frank O'Connor, who's the overseer of the Halo franchise, who took to NeoGAF and said that although Locke is a primary character, Chief is the main character and hero, and when somebody said they're probably going to test the waters to see if they can retire Master Chief, he said no. The end. This kind of lays to rest the theory that Master Chief will ultimately attain peace in this game. Or does it? Because it would be interesting for him to say, no, we're not going to retire Master Chief, kind of to throw some smoke in the air and then ultimately end up retiring Master Chief. I personally think, as I've said, that Master Chief should be retired from the franchise. They need someone new. The silent, stoic, emotionless soldier character can only stay interesting for so long, and I think that so far the interactions they've shown between Fireteam Osiris and Locke and the personalities of these new young Spartans are much more vibrant than Chief's, and that's good because vibrant characters lead to conflict, and conflict leads to interesting storylines. So I think that although Chief has had a great run, I think it is ultimately time to retire him as the main Spartan of the Halo franchise. I think it's time for that new blood to come in. That being said, the last option is that Locke actually realizes that Chief is right, or that there is something to Chief's thinking about his humanity, and joins with Chief and leaves as a renegade with Chief. But then why would the UNSC only say that Chief was deceased and portray him as a hero, when it would be much more effective to blackmail Chief's image by saying that he had killed Locke and a team of Spartans, and that the UNSC had then been forced to kill him, resulting in the ultimate image of the UNSC being significantly bolstered, the soldiers being shown that you actually can take down a rogue Spartan if they ever happen to go rogue, which you know that some soldiers must worry about, and you know that that would be an affirmation to them that although Spartans are like gods and it's amazing to have them on your side, they can be taken out if something goes wrong. And it would ultimately give the UNSC even more of a benevolently savior-ish image in the people's minds. So overall, no, of course Chief isn't dead. Might he die by the end of this game? Maybe. There's a strong possibility. On the other hand, Frank O'Connor said no. Who knows? What's the main storyline? I told you my theories about it, but the actual storyline could be entirely different. We won't ultimately know until the game is released. Regardless, no, you rummies, Chief isn't dead at the beginning of the game. Put your thinking caps on, dammit. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found this video informative. If you did, feel free to leave a like, a dislike if you think the video wasn't informative, a comment, a sub, a share, a favorite, or whatever you feel this video deserves. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. GM out.